fellow delegates, ladies and gentlemen. We are living a historical accelerated phase, rich in opportunities, but also, perhaps above all, dense with dangers. Suspended between war and peace. According to the Global Peace Index 2024, there are currently 56 armed conflicts ongoing in the world, the highest number since the Second World War. We live in a world profoundly different from the one in which the United Nations was founded when, in 1945, 51 nations, today nearly all of the nations of the world, decided to come together to found an international organization whose main purpose was to prevent war. The question we must ask ourselves 80 years later, while looking around us, is, have we succeeded? The answer you all know, because it lies in the headlines, and it is merciless. Peace, dialogue, diplomacy seem no longer able to persuade or to prevail. The use of force prevails on far too many occasions, and the scenario before us is that which Pope Francis described with unique effectiveness, a third world war, fought piecemeal. Obviously, among the major conflicts underway is, of course, the large-scale war of aggression by the Russian Federation against Ukraine. 3.5 years ago, on February 24th, 2022, Moscow decided to attack Kyiv. And I believe not enough reflection has been given to the consequences of that choice, to a point I consider fundamental. The Russian Federation, a permanent member of the Security Council, deliberately trampled on Article 2 of the UN Charter, violating the integrity and political independence of another sovereign state, with the aim of annexing its territory. And still today, it shows no willingness to seriously accept any invitation to sit at the peace table. This deep wound, inflicted on international law, as could be foreseen, unleashed destabilizing effects far beyond the borders in which that war is taking place. The conflict in Ukraine has rekindled and set off several other crises. Meanwhile, the United Nations has become even more divided. It is no coincidence that Hamas took advantage of the weakening of this architecture to launch on October 7th, 2023, its attack against Israel. The ferocity and brutality of that attack, the hunt for unarmed civilians, prompted Israel to a reaction that was at first legitimate, because every state and every people has the right to defend itself. But the response to aggression must always respect the principle of proportionality. This applies to individuals and all the more so to states. And Israel has exceeded that limit with a large-scale war disproportionately involving the Palestinian civilian population. And it is in crossing this limit that the Jewish state has ended up violating humanitarian norms, causing a massacre among civilians. This choice, which Italy has repeatedly deemed unacceptable, will lead us to vote in favor of some of the sanctions proposed by the European Commission against Israel. But we do not side with those who heap all the blame for what is happening in Gaza on Israel, because it was Hamas that unleashed the war. It is Hamas that could end the suffering of Palestinians by immediately releasing all the hostages. It is Hamas that seems intent on thriving on the suffering of the people it claims to represent. Israel must free itself from the trap of this war. It must do so for the history of the Jewish people, for its democracy, for the innocent, and for the universal values of the free world of which it is part. And to end the war, concrete solutions are needed. Peace is not built only with appeals or with ideological proclamations embraced with enthusiasm by those who in truth do not want peace. Peace is built with patience, with courage, with reasonableness. The children of Gaza, like those Italy is proudly receiving and treating in its hospitals, are asking for answers that can improve their condition. And to that we are committed. Italy is and will be there for anyone willing to work on a serious plan for the release of hostages, a permanent ceasefire, the exclusion of Hamas from any governance dynamic in Palestine, the gradual withdrawal of Israel from Gaza, and the involvement of the international community in managing the subsequent phase of the ceasefire, leading to the realization of the two-state perspective. In this regard, we consider very interesting the proposals that the President of the United States has discussed recently with Arab countries, and we are ready to lend a hand. We believe that Israel has no right to prevent the future creation of a Palestinian state, nor to build new settlements in the West Bank to that end. For this reason, we have signed the New York Declaration on the two-state solution. This is Italy's historic position on the Palestinian question, and it has never changed. At the same time, we believe that the recognition of Palestine must have two indispensable preconditions: the release of all Israeli hostages and Hamas's renunciation of any role in the government of Palestine. For those who unleash the conflict cannot be rewarded. And thus we return to the starting point, the rules, the force of law. In Ukraine, in the Middle East, in every scenario where war dominates and reason seems lost. There's no escaping, colleagues, the most important question, which is the reason we're all here together today. Is the United Nations architecture we built 80 years ago up to task in the face of the challenges we are facing today? It is not. And multilateralism, dialogue, and diplomacy without institutions that function as they should are only empty words. We must recognize our limits. We must recognize that a profound reform of the United Nations is necessary and urgent, not an ideological reform, but a pragmatic, realistic one that respects the sovereignty of nations and opens to shared solutions. We need an agile, efficient institution able to respond quickly to crises,